Remember one time walking in the studio, Bleak Beans, everybody was in there, and I was like, man, I'm telling you, man, y'all got a chance right now. Just flood it, put out a lot of music because 50 Cent is coming. And, you know, 4 months later, in the club hit and it was over. And it was just like, okay, now everybody got to sit on the sidelines and wait this tidal wave out.
There's a huge difference in energy internationally in 50 Cent and Jay-Z. In fact, his largest selling record sold 430-something thousand copies. My largest selling records sold 5 million. Let them be fooled in America and think.
What if I told you Jay-Z tried to stop 50 Cent from performing at the Super Bowl, sabotaged his own artists, and signed Rihanna at 3 a.m. with no supervision? The truth about Jay-Z's darkest moves is finally coming to light, and 50 Cent is naming names. This isn't gossip, this is war.
That was the first of me actually hearing it. Like, oh shit. Like, I used to have questions like, why every time my album dropped, Jay would drop right on top of me. He wouldn't let me breathe or right before me. Like, I was always close, and I always thought like, damn, if a kid, back then it was physical copies. So if you had $20, $20 that you saved up and you was gonna buy an album, and it's under the same house, Rockefeller, between Jay and BBC, 9 times out of 10 you won't buy the Jay-Z album. I never understood that every single album that I dropped, Jay dropped right on time. And it was like, damn, like to have in-house competition at that magnitude was crazy. Jay already the boss, but I always thought that, like, let me breathe. But to maliciously plot to hold me back, I don't know, man. I don't believe that. I don't want to believe that. I mean, but like I said, Dame would know better than me.
Rumors are echoing through the halls of hip-hop, and 50 Cent has decided it's time to speak up. After years of keeping things under wraps, he's bringing to light some heavy claims about Jay-Z, from accusations of cheating and questionable mentorship tactics with young talent, to a mysterious contract tied to Beyoncé. Jay-Z, known for his tight grip on the music industry, has reportedly urged those close to him to steer clear of 50 Cent. But now, 50 is pushing back, naming names and revealing the behind-the-scenes efforts Jay allegedly made to silence or sideline those who stood in his way.
He's on a whole nother level. Like, I mean, you know, he's like, but you know what I like about 50? 50's on a whole nother level, but he's still approachable. You still get to meet the people and you know, Jay got to remember the people that made him. You know, I'm not saying I don't got respect. I respect Jay-Z, 50, used to respect, you know, Diddy, but all that crazy going on. But, you know, I always respected him because I looked at, for New York, those were like the guys, you know what I'm saying? The guys with the most money and the most influence. So with Jay is like, when the last time you haven't seen Jay, so I think people are just gonna say that. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I mean, Jay, you know, you gotta remember, he didn't want 50 at the Super Bowl. That was crazy. I'm like,
wait, Jay didn't want 50 at the Super
you didn't
Bowl?
know that? Yeah, he didn't want.
I remember Eminem pushed for it.
That was some hated. Yeah,
I remember Eminem was like, I'm not gonna do it unless 50 does it. I heard that.
Yeah,
but I didn't know that Jay was trying to stop it.
I don't think Jay. I don't know. 50 never told me that, but I don't think Jay wanted him there. I don't know.
Because of what, some of the.
I mean,
back
you
and
know,
forth,
it's competition. You got to think. 50 always been competition for Jay. Remember, I'm about $1. What the 50 Cent?
That was a long time ago.
That was what, 9? What was
yeah,
that?
But
9?
But after that, they did a song together. Remember
yeah,
the whole,
of course, but 50 was
sneaker
50
thing?
was always competition for. Then remember Jay said, yo, 50's coming. He told Siegel and them, and Memphis Bleak and all them.
Yeah.
And come on, 50's like, he's on a whole nother level. You got to remember, he came after Jay and Rockefeller. G-Unit came, and people might G-Unit, but with Eminem, Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, nobody has outsold us, bro.
Yeah.
Nobody has had the effect that we had.
The tension between 50 Cent and Jay-Z traces all the way back to the late 90s, sparked by 50's sharp jab in How to Rob, where he dismissed Jay as a pretender in the game. Even then, 50 seemed to sense something, that Jay-Z's real power wasn't in lyrical warfare, but in pulling strings behind the curtain. According to 50, Jay had a pattern. Instead of facing rivals head-on, he allegedly used his industry ties to sideline them. Years later, during Jay-Z's feud with Nas, similar tactics reportedly surfaced: attempts to sabotage Nas's album release by undercutting its momentum. The same strategy was allegedly aimed at 50, with Jay dropping music just ahead of 50's launches to flood the charts. Ironically, both Jay-Z and Diddy have often spoken about empowering black artists, but some critics argue their moves have sometimes worked against the very community they claim to uplift. Beanie Sigel's experience paints a similar picture, blackballed some say, and conveniently overshadowed by Jay-Z's carefully timed album drops.
Look, when Jay signed his contract, the big one was with Beyonce. When he signed that contract, the marriage contract, he got trophies. Now those trophies, those trophies came rolling in, buddy. He started getting Grammys left and right, man. I mean, look, if you look at his career,
Wow. You're gonna let him say that? Jay was getting Grammys.
He had one.
Exactly.
He had one.
And he ain't show up.
No, he has like 20 now.
Oh, Lord.
He had like 18 since he been down. Look, he had one, bro. Hard Knock Life.
You're not wrong.
He was
At
one.
the same time,
After that, he got them shits. He's like drinking. His pictures with him like, thinks the cup.
Wait a minute. So you're saying the success is derived from the marriage?
I've absolutely been treated differently.
The accolades.
Because he's no
marriage.
longer viewed as what, like a street or gangster rapper. Now he's viewed as a businessman, entrepreneur, family man.
And the biggest ones because of the position Beyonce's.
Oh, wow.
Jay-Z allegedly went as far as trying to keep 50 Cent off the Super Bowl halftime stage, a move that could have erased 50 from one of music's biggest moments. But it was Eminem who stepped in and made it clear 50 had to be part of the show. That insistence from M, who's long stood by 50 as both a friend and ally, ultimately sealed the deal. Through all the behind-the-scenes politics, Eminem proved once again that loyalty matters more than power plays. Even with all the success he's achieved, 50 Cent has never turned his back on those around him. Tony Yayo once praised him not just as a rap legend, but as someone who remains grounded, especially in how he supports and connects with fellow black artists. That sense of accessibility and loyalty has become a defining trait of 50's legacy. In contrast, Jay-Z is often seen as distant, carrying himself with an air of untouchability, as if his stature places him above the rest.
Jay Brown had actually bought me the song. She has a song right now, and it's I wouldn't say massive because of her roots, but she has this outrageous song called Upon the Replay. And he played that song for me, and I was scared. I was like, that song is too big for her. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, a new artist, when a song is that big, it's it's hard to come back from. And I don't sign songs, I sign artists.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Why don't you break down the difference between that? Because the viewing public might not understand that.
Some people chase the hot song for a minute, and then they sign, based on the song. I want to sign it based on an artist, based on, or based on the swagger, based on the level of talent, based on the writing, So I was a little reluctant when I first heard the song, and then, he kept going, Jay Brown, he kept being persistent. I was like, you know what, bring her by. And when she walked into our office, I was like, she just had, it was just something about her. It was just, she had this, it was just something about her. And then she performed the song, and I was like, okay. Then, we sat down and we talked. And they were talking about how she would stay in the studio and try to get the verse over and then come back the next day. I was like, oh, work ethic, everything is there. So we signed it that night. We didn't let her leave the office.
Really?
The 3 a.m. was when that contract got signed. So from the meeting around 3, 4 in the afternoon, we signed it by 3 a.m. Wow. That day I was at.
The cultural atmosphere took a noticeable turn after 2016. By the time 2020 arrived, the landscape of music, celebrity influence, and black cultural representation had transformed into something far more curated, opulent, and image-conscious. The game wasn't just elevated, it had been entirely redefined. Luxury, status, and symbolism were no longer just accessories to the music industry. They were the main act. Power was now worn on sleeves and shown off in carefully staged Instagram posts, multi-million-dollar brunches, exclusive galas, and red carpet appearances. For many, this shift represented progress, an era where black artists were no longer just entertainers, but moguls, CEOs, and billionaires, shaping global narratives and redefining what success could look like. Events like the now iconic Billionaire Brunch became visual emblems of that shift. These weren't just networking events. They were cultural milestones. They sent a message. Black excellence was no longer just about breaking into white-dominated spaces, it was about owning them, redesigning them, and deciding who got in. The optics were powerful. Black men and women, dressed in couture, clinking champagne glasses on manicured lawns, discussing investments, legacy, and building generational wealth. The curated photos and headlines told a story of unity, of upliftment, of shared progress. It looked like victory, but as is often the case with highly manicured images, the reality underneath wasn't always as inclusive or harmonious as it seemed. While a select circle basked in the spotlight sipping champagne and solidifying billion-dollar alliances, others in the industry watched from a distance. For every artist seated at those brunch tables, there were dozens more who felt alienated, marginalized, or simply overlooked. There was a growing sentiment that black excellence had become an exclusive club, a branding exercise that benefited the few while ignoring the many. And at the center of this new order stood Jay-Z. For years, Jay-Z had been regarded as the blueprint, a man who transformed himself from hustler to hip-hop icon to business titan. His journey from the Marcy Projects to music mogul status inspired generations. But according to critics like 50 Cent, the story behind the shine isn't as noble or inspirational as it's made out to be. To them, Jay-Z's rise isn't just about talent and determination, it's about strategy, control, and meticulously calculated moves that prioritize power over principle. 50 Cent, never one to hold back, has repeatedly challenged the public perception of Jay-Z as a visionary leader or cultural hero. He paints a different picture, one of a man obsessed with his legacy, who treats relationships as business transactions and sees people not as partners, but as pieces on a chessboard. According to 50, Jay-Z's most high-profile one with Beyoncé is no exception. From the outside, Jay-Z and Beyoncé are the ultimate power couple. Together, they command influence over music, fashion, philanthropy, and politics. They've built empires side by side, making appearances that exude elegance, discipline, and unshakable brand unity. But 50 argues that their marriage wasn't born from passion or love, but from calculation. He claims it was a business arrangement, a strategic alliance, designed to amplify both of their careers and cement their cultural dominance. And the numbers, some say, support this theory. Jay-Z's profile skyrocketed after marrying Beyoncé. Awards began pouring in. Industry doors swung wider. Since tying the knot, he has won dozens of Grammys and accolades, many of which critics believe are more about maintaining the Carter dynasty's dominance than recognizing artistic merit. Even their children have been awarded Grammys despite not having released any music themselves. It created the appearance that the industry wasn't just applauding talent, it was rewarding the brand. Too many, these accolades and appearances are signs of greatness, proof that Jay-Z has earned his place at the top. But to 50 Cent and others like him, it's evidence of something more cynical, that Jay-Z has mastered the art of narrative control. He doesn't just make music, he manufactures legacy. Every public move, every endorsement deal, every partnership, every red carpet appearance seems carefully engineered to maintain a position of superiority, to remind the world that he's untouchable. 50's criticism runs deeper than jealousy or rivalry. He believes Jay-Z represents a type of power that is dangerously unchecked, one that influences not just record labels or business ventures, but public perception and cultural direction. And when someone with that level of influence is driven, not by empathy, collaboration, or authenticity, but by control and image management, 50 sees it as a threat not just to the industry, but to the very idea of community upliftment. While many hail Jay-Z as a symbol of black empowerment, 50 argues that he has, at times, done more to suppress other black voices than uplift them. Behind closed doors, he claims, Jay-Z uses his influence to blacklist, manipulate release dates, and silence those who refuse to align with him, from blocking artists from award shows to undermining album launches. The accusations suggest that Jay's power isn't just used for personal gain, it's also weaponized against those he sees as competition. And yet, Jay-Z remains largely untouchable. He's praised for his activism, honored for his philanthropy, and respected for his business acumen. But to those on the outside, those not invited to the brunch, those without Grammy nods, those whose paths were deliberately blocked, it starts to look less like inspiration and more like insulation, a fortress built not on community, but on calculated control. 50 Cent's message is simple but bold. Behind the tailored suits, the curated Instagram posts, and the speeches about legacy lies a man whose primary loyalty has always been to power. While others may play along, eager to stay in Jay-Z's good graces, 50 has nothing to hide and nothing to lose. He's not afraid to ask the questions everyone else is too cautious to voice, as the music industry continues to shift and more voices challenge the old guard. Jay-Z's legacy will no doubt be reevaluated, not just for what he built, but for how he built it. And 50 Cent, like it or not, is forcing that conversation to happen.
Difficult to say, I'm going to talk about the problems in our marriage. I'm going to talk about how we almost lost things. And for her to say, I'm going to talk about my pain and anger at you. What were those conversations like?
Again, it didn't happen in that way. It happened, we were using our art almost like a therapy session, and we started making music together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the music she was making at that time was further along. So her album came out as opposed to the joint album that we were working on. We still have a lot of that music. And this is what it became. There was never a point where it was like, I'm making this album. I was there.
Right.
I was right there the entire time.
And what was her reaction to your work, and what was your reaction to hers? They must have caused
I think they were
pain
both,
for each of you, right?
Of course. And it both very, very uncomfortable, but sitting in that, the best place in the, hurricane is like in the middle of it.
Yeah.
We were sitting in the eye of that hurricane. Maybe not use hurricane because so many people are being affected right now, but the best place is right in the middle of the pain.
Right.
And that's where we were sitting, and it was uncomfortable. And we had a lot of conversations,
Right.
and really proud of the music she made, and she was really proud of the art I released. And, at the end of the day, we really have a healthy respect for one another's craft. I think she's amazing.
Right.
Most people walk away and like divorce rate is like 50% or something, because most people can't see themselves. The hardest thing is seeing pain on someone's face that you caused.
By 2020, the landscape of hip-hop and black celebrity culture had changed drastically. The glitz was dialed up, and the so-called billionaire brunches became a symbol of elevated status, wealth, influence, unity. But beneath the designer suits and speeches about black excellence, critics argue that some of the unity was more image than substance. Among those speaking out is 50 Cent, who has long questioned Jay-Z's motivations. According to him, Jay's rise to award show royalty accelerated only after marrying Beyoncé. Before that, the accolades were far fewer. Since tying the knot, Jay-Z has reportedly amassed over a dozen Grammys, and even their children, who haven't released music, have been honored. Two critics like 50. These trophies are less about merit and more about keeping the Carters in the public spotlight. Awards as invitations, not achievements. Jay-Z has always positioned himself as a businessman first. Some admire that. Others, like 50 Cent, believe it's gone too far. Allegedly, even his marriage to Beyoncé was more contract than connection, a power move to cement their mutual dominance. And it's this view that, some say, explains the repeated cheating allegations surrounding Jay-Z, including whispered rumors of an early affair with Rihanna. Rihanna's story is often held up as both inspiring and unsettling. She was just 16 when Jay-Z signed her alone. Flown into the US without parental supervision, and introduced to industry giants under unusual circumstances. According to reports, she was asked to perform in a hotel room at 3 a.m., and her contract, the fastest inked deal in Def Jam history, was signed just hours later. While some celebrate that moment as the launch of a global star, others raise eyebrows about how it unfolded. Industry insiders, like Jaguar Wright, have long hinted at darker truths beneath Jay-Z's polished image. She's publicly claimed to be working with victims tied to both Jay-Z and Beyoncé, and a growing number of people are starting to take those claims more seriously, especially as lawsuits begin to surface. Wright, and others like her, say the culture of silence around Jay-Z is cracking. People always suspected, she says, they just weren't ready to speak. In fact, Jay-Z's controversies stretch back decades. In 1999, he made headlines after allegedly stabbing record executive Lance Rivera at a Manhattan nightclub. Jay-Z eventually turned himself in, and while he denied involvement, the case lingered as a stain on his public image. Over the years, more shadows followed: infidelity, control issues, and questions about how much of his empire was built through manipulation rather than merit. One of the most famous incidents pointing to tension behind closed doors came in 2014, when surveillance footage showed Beyoncé's sister Solange physically attacking Jay-Z in an elevator after the Met Gala. Beyoncé didn't intervene. Many saw it as a silent endorsement, a moment that confirmed what the public already suspected: the cracks in the Carter marriage were real. Alleged affairs with Rihanna, Rita Ora, and designer Rachel Roy only added fuel to the fire. And while Beyoncé has hinted at betrayal in her music, she's never publicly acted on it. To critics, this silence speaks volumes, further reinforcing the belief that their relationship is more about strategy than love, a brand partnership disguised as a marriage. As more people step forward and whisper networks turn into public conversations, one thing is clear: the mythology around Jay-Z is beginning to fracture, and as the layers peel back, the industry and the public are being forced to ask, how much of his success was built on brilliance, and how much on control? Back in 2020, the culture had shifted. Everything was glossier, bigger, and more curated, from the outfits to the optics of black excellence. The billionaire brunches, the carefully crafted public images, the calls for unity, it was all part of a polished narrative. But behind the speeches and champagne flutes, a different story was unfolding. And 50 Cent wasn't buying the fantasy. He began speaking out about Jay-Z, about power, about manipulation. One of his most repeated claims: Jay-Z's success, post-2008, wasn't just talent, it was strategy, especially after his marriage to Beyoncé. According to 50, the Grammys, the influence, even the image of perfection. None of it happened until after that union. Their kids hadn't even released music, and yet they had Grammys, symbols. 50 said, not of talent, but of power plays. Awards were tools, not trophies. Jay-Z has long presented himself as the ultimate businessman. But to 50, there's a difference between being business savvy and being calculated to a fault. He's gone so far as to claim that Jay's relationship with Beyoncé was less about love and more about leverage, a contract wrapped in glamour. And that alleged arrangement, he says, also explains Jay-Z's repeated infidelity, including whispered rumors involving Rihanna, Rita Ora, and others. Rihanna's rise is now legendary, but the way it began still raises uncomfortable questions. At just 16, she was flown to the US alone, auditioned in a hotel room at 3 a.m., and signed to Def Jam within hours. The story's often told as a rags-to-riches triumph. But some, like Jaguar Wright, say it's a story of exploitation, not empowerment. Wright, a former collaborator with Jay-Z, has gone public, calling him not just manipulative, but dangerous. According to her, people in the industry have protected Jay for years because they fear him, or rely on him. The accusations only grew louder when a lawsuit refiled in 2024 accused both Jay-Z and Diddy of assaulting a 13-year-old girl at a VMA afterparty back in 2000. Jay-Z denied the claims, calling them heinous, and accused the attorney behind the case of using the legal system for media attention. Still, questions linger. Why is the industry so silent? Why aren't more people speaking up? 50 Cent isn't holding back. In multiple interviews from Big Boy TV to the Flagrant podcast, he's made it clear, he's not afraid of Jay-Z, Diddy, or anyone else. He's been vocal about everything from alleged druggings to shady deals to what he calls image theater. While others tiptoe around names, 50 says them out loud. On Flagrant, he mocked Jay-Z's fashion choices, comparing him to Jean-Michel Basquiat, not out of admiration, but to highlight what he sees as Jay's obsession with optics. Big homie wants to look like a gay painter, he said bluntly, criticizing Jay-Z's rebranding as art-forward and avant-garde, while hiding deeper truths. 250, it's all performance. He even alleged that Jay-Z blocked him from a major NFL ad campaign, while Eminem, loyal as ever, fought for his spot in the Super Bowl halftime show. They still harbor something, 50 said, suggesting Jay-Z hasn't let go of past grudges. Meanwhile, the industry, he claims, stays quiet not out of respect, but fear. But 50 won't play that game. He's not afraid to name names. He insists, he's got nothing to hide and no skeletons in the closet that could be used to silence him. If I wasn't speaking, he said, you could assume I was in on it too. Jaguar Wright continues to speak out as well. She insists Jay-Z has carefully curated his power from behind the scenes. working through silence, secrecy, and influence. She claims to have witnessed Rihanna's signing firsthand, calling it disturbing. A 16-year-old girl, flown into Manhattan, alone, auditioning in an executive's office late at night, then held there until a deal was signed. "There's no way out of this office," she recalls Jay-Z saying. "I signed her that night." Rihanna herself has mentioned the intense pressure of that moment in past interviews, describing her nerves, the overwhelming environment, and being told there were only two ways to leave: through the door with a deal, or out the window. On the 29th floor. Today, 50 Cent and Jaguar Wright argue that Jay-Z and Diddy are two sides of the same coin. Powerful men who've manipulated not just the music business, but the culture itself. The difference: Diddy operates in plain sight. Jay-Z, they say, works in the shadows, careful, calculated, untouchable. Even Jay-Z's public comments about his marriage with Beyoncé raise eyebrows. In interviews, he described their joint musical process as therapy, a way to heal through the pain of infidelity. He admitted it wasn't easy, confronting the damage he'd caused, sitting in the eye of the hurricane. And yet, despite the emotional weight of it all, many still see their union as a business alliance first, a relationship second. As lawsuits mount and headlines grow darker, 50 Cent remains one of the few voices in hip-hop unafraid to speak plainly. He says what others won't. He questions the stories others celebrate. And while most of the industry continues to look the other way, 50 keeps pulling the curtain back on a man who, for years, seemed untouchable. So now the question is, what does 50 Cent know that the rest of the industry is too afraid to say?